part 2 of the Dresden plate tutorial. I'm picking up where I left off in part 1. So this is part 2, and you'll see how we finished it and how I quilted it. You'll have seen the finished quilt. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody. So as you can see, I've just stitched one half of my blades together, and as you can see, I'm going to do my other half, and then I'll just put them together. And this is looking pretty good because these are 10 blades, and as you can see, they're pretty straight. So my other ones will just attach along here, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is right now I've stitched along these blades going this way. So I just want to, as you know, I just manipulate my fabric very carefully so the seams are nice. There's no little tucks or folds in the seams. And I'm just, as you can see, I'm just pressing my seams very gently right around to follow the same direction. I think in applique it will lay nice and flat. So I'll turn this around. Oh, it looks like the NBC Peacock. Does anybody remember that? Probably not. I'm dating myself. So I'm just going to spray that along, press that, and then I'm going to do the other half. And I have done. Do you see this dark light? Whatever. You take a blind man to see it, but I think it makes your colors blend a little bit. Whatever. But as I said, in whatever fabric. But look at this, finished, done. I'm going to have a huge, great big Dresden plate in a matter of minutes. So I just wanted to point out that I've just stitched these 5 sets of 2 together. And I just wanted to point out to you folks that I did not chain piece anything. When I was making these, I'm off in favor of chain piecing, but I did stitch the 2 to 2 to 2 to 2. I did stop and start to make this unit. I guess you could have chain pieced it into 4, into 6, I don't know. But these are my 2 halves, and I'm going to go stitch it. But look at that. When I go sew these 2 together, look how, with my 1/4 inch seam, look how flat my Dresden plate is. And it's not me, it's the cutting and it's the stitching. And you can too have an incredibly flat Dresden plate. That's what the problem was, it used to be. That maybe you weren't good with a 1/4 inch seam. Perfect your 1/4 inch seam. Perfect your pressing, your ironing. I've pressed all of these seams all around, and it just lays nice and flat. So I'm going to go stitch this, and then we go applique it, and I'll show you how to do that. So here, folks, is my finished Dresden plate. Like, unbelievable. It lays flat, nice edges, and I'm going to be showing you how I will applique this onto my my quilt block, as it were. Again, if you want to make a quilt, you could do this smaller, and there's your quilt block. You applique it, and you make 8 or 10 of her, or whatever, however many of them, and put them together with a sashing. Easy quilt, actually, easy quilt. Once you get the hang of the applique, which this is my method. Tons of ways to applique. You can come along and stitch it. You can satin stitch it, although that's a finished edge. I don't know why you want to satin stitch it. You could just stitch here and have the ends free, whatever. But this is how I do it. Now, on my block, as you see, I don't have a lot of spare. I like the idea with this quilt of having this focal fabric right up, like, right to the edge. So this is a feature plus my focal fabric. So this is the reason I made this block. You can make this block huge if you wanted this hanging bigger. One thing before we start gluing, we're going to glue it down, is you might just think, oh, I'll just stick that on. It's neither no rhyme nor reason, but I do think that there's this point here in one of the blades is just, I find the sort of, I rough it, the center of my quilt block, here and here, and the center down here. And then I just put the middle. It's just a tiny little thing, Anyway, to center it on my block. Oh, let me see what this looks like. Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, I quite like that. But yeah, I do like that actually, because it brings out the cream of this, because this is very dark. I like that. I like that a lot. Brings a little bit of relief. I don't know if I like that big though, but we'll see. So anyway, I use Elmer's glue. By all means, go to your quilt store. I've said this before, and get the proper fabric glue stick. I've never had a problem with this. This is what I use. This is Elmer's washable glue stick, acid-free. That sounds good. Disappearing purple. I think you can, it's either disappearing purple or, oh, that's like the white. That's like the clear one. There's disappearing purple and the white for little kids. So literally all you do is, all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a little dash here on the petal leaf, the petal points of my blocks here, because this is where I'm going to be stitching it. So I'm going to go right around on those points, doing it down like that, doing it around. I find this works real well. I don't do it on here as much, because I'll show you what I do. I just put my points down there. I come around right to the end, 2 seconds. My points are nice and down all the way around the quilt, securing them. Let my glue do the work. Now what I do, because remember, these are 2 pieces of fabric, and you're like, well, how are they going to stick together? What I do take a few pins, and not at the points, just a few through all those layers, just a few, and then just literally just maybe 7 or 8, just right around to secure, because these edges are pretty secure now. So I'm just going to secure my block with these pins to the two pieces of fabric there. Now what I'm going to do is, I am going to, in the corners, and maybe up here, and maybe 2 in each corner, just secure the 2 pieces of fabric together, treating it as one. I don't find it necessary to stitch around. You may, but unless you're really perfect, it might like pucker. So I just find, you may know me, smooth, smooth, smooth. Just smooth everything out. And then we're literally just treating this cream fabric as one. I've cut it pretty good. I've cut the blocks pretty the exact same, whatever it is. I think it's 22.5 inches a square. Actually right off the bolt. And there you go. I'm now going to take this sandwich over here, this block, and it is heavy. Well, it's not heavy, but it's substantial, because this is a lot of fabric, really. And so that's why I like to do it the 2. And then my hanging lays nice and flat. Just keep smoothing it down. These edges are affixed down. And now I'll just show you how I'm going to blanket stitch applique. Hopefully I can get up close so you can see my detail of how I applique this down, and then how I'm going to applique. I'm going to do it exactly like my sunflower with my regular foot. I'm just going to come along and add some dimension for which you can do on your home sewing machine also. I've started appliquing my plate onto my background fabric, and I hope you can see it. What I'm using I'll show you later, the spool. What I'm using is a variegated green. It goes from pale green to a medium green to a darker green and then back. This is a sulky thread I'm using. I usually use the Robinson Anton, but I like this green. I just had it, so I liked it. And I'm going to show you, I set my machine to a very large, very wide, both vertically and horizontal stitch. Probably the widest my machine has. No, actually I think you can go one bigger, but this is a nice one. And again, I like this because it's like a folky look. You could do it in black or again, any applique method. But what is important with this blanket stitch, if you choose that, is that your needle, I've done a few of these blades already, if you can see. I've appliqued them onto the top, and I've started in here. So at the top of this one, what you want to do is you want to make sure your needle is riding on the right alongside the fabric. You don't want to catch the colored fabric. All that's catching are your stitches. With this applique, with my machine at least, it's not a slow process, but it's not as quick as just a regular stitch, because the fabric goes, you'll see, it shifts back and forth in order to make that stitch. So however your machine is set up, so on this lot, my needle has gone to the top of my point, and when my presser foot goes down, then my stitches will catch my point. Now it's very important that you hold your fabric tightly and smoothly, because even though these are glued down, because your machine is shifting a bit in order to make this stitch, you have to just make sure you're holding it very firm and be sure that your needle is catching the white, the length of your stitch, but your stitches, I'm not describing it well. Do you get it? Your needle, this part is on your white fabric, and the actual stitches are on your blade of fabric. You don't really want that long stitch on your fabric. It can look a bit messy. All you want to see are these stitches, and it might take some doing. Now my needle is going on. I really do have to hold my fabric. If my hands are in my way, I apologize. So you can see, because there's a lot of fabric there, you can see the needle catching. I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way, but you have to really hold your fabric, sort of pull it behind so everything is smooth. Remember, smooth, smooth, smooth. So my needle, see how it shifts back and forth? My needle's going right next to the blade, not in it, except for the large stitches that go in it. Again, I'm holding my fabric. And then you want your needle to end on that stitch at the corner. Then you shift your fabric. Again, it's right in front of you. Put your presser foot down. You're smoothing everything, and then your needle is again going to ride right along here, and the stitches are going to go that way. This you might want to do fairly slowly to make sure your needle goes right next to the fabric and not onto it. And then you want to just, oops, now there you go. Now my needle's at the top, and I just turn my fabric, smoothing it till it's right in front of me, so I know that needle's going to, because it's a little bit of a bulk at that needle, you just want to just smooth it. Smoothing your fabric all the while. Don't go fast on this one. You just want to take your time to do this applique. My needle's down in that blade right there, and I'm just going to go around. Oh, I like this. This is like the paler green on this darker burgundy, if you can see that. Oh, did it just mess up? Oh, I ran out of bobbin thread. Can you believe it? I wanted to show you something. I've just run out of bobbin thread. But as you can see, there's like the paler green and then the darker green. So that's a good place to end. I ran out of bobbin thread, and I'll pick up and I'll just stitch right along there. And I'll just stitch this whole thing down. And it's appliqued on. And then I'll show you how I do the center. So I wanted to show you that I finished appliquing my block, my Dresden plate to my block. Now I'm going to leave these safety pins in. I did take all of these safety pins out. At this point, you want to treat this very carefully because all that's appliqued are your ends, are the ends of the blade. This middle is not appliqued, and we won't be appliquing it, as it were, until the end quilting. When I quilted at the very end, which if you look at the if you look back at my sunflower, I'm going to quilt it with my machine. Very, very easy. I'm not going to be showing you how to do that. Very easy from this point on up and back down, around, up, and back down. Just a gentle curve, but I will show you, which is going to look exactly like the sunflower. I'll show you how I quilt that. Just very carefully keep these edges together with the pins. I've taken the pins out here, but what I wanted to show you, I actually cut this down slightly. I didn't like the bigger one. I cut it down, my middle, just slightly, and I cut down the piece of batting also. And all I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to applique. Oh, it's all sticky. Ugh. I'm just gonna put this here, my glue, bring it in here, and well, because it sort of gets a bit sticky on the batting. So I'm just going to do it the size of the batting, and just center it, as it were, and then around the edges of my center circle. And then just center that over that batting. And then all I'm going to be doing is, see how it's a little bit of a little bit proud. It's nice. I like it. All I'm going to be doing is taking my variegated thread, my blanket stitch, and I'm going to be stitching around that center square, that center circle. And then I'm just going to be putting the borders on. I think I have like 6-inch borders all the way around. And then I'll quilt it. I won't be showing you that because I actually showed you on my sunflower, but you'll have seen the finished product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blanket stitch this around, and then in the quilting process, I'll start here, pulling my threads up. You would think, yeah. So when I'm going to quilt it, I'm not going to quilt this blade here. I'm not going to quilt that seam, but you'll have seen the thing. I'm just going to quilt a curved, come around, and go back, and you'll have seen the finished product. So there you go. You'll have seen it. This is how I applique my Dresden plate, and it's done. And I'm just going to put my borders on, and you'll have seen the quilt. So thanks folks for bearing with me, and I hope you make a pretty Dresden plate. Just handle this real carefully, and you'll be really thrilled. Make them any size, put them together, just make one, and yeah, it's exciting. So thanks so much, folks. Bye. I realize as I'm quilting this that I'm going to be having to do a part 1 and part 2 because it's miles too long. So I might as well show you actually the quilting stitch that I've used. Now, as on my sunflower, I'm stitching every with my regular foot. I'm stitching the petals or the blades of this quilt on this just a very slight curve. I've done all of that, having affixed it, just this slight curve. But what I wanted to show you is I'm actually using a metallic thread. This is a gold thread that's terrible. If you've ever sewn with metallic thread, it shreds and it breaks, and it's, I don't know why I tried it. But when I was actually looking at my quilt, I thought it's a little bit dull. And this fabric, I don't know if you can see it. This fabric is so beautiful. It has it's sort of shot with gold. It's really pretty. So I thought when I'm quilting it, I want to just bring out that little bit of metallic, and it actually does sparkle a little bit as I'm sewing. Now I'm going to be quilting this a little bit different than my sunflower. I use a free motion quilting stitch in here. I'm not going to be doing that because I'm seeing more of a star when I see this actual quilting take place. As you know, my quilts evolve, and so all I'm doing is I'm stitching about a half, a quarter of an inch away from the blades, as it were, with my metallic thread. And as I said, if you've ever worked with it, ugh, it's dreadful, but it adds a real nice, pretty sparkle. And again, this entire quilt will have been quilted on my home sewing machine. I'm just doing this again. I'm holding it just as I've done everything. As you can see, I didn't show it because I didn't think I would be videoing it, but I've actually put on the borders. And as I was making it, you'll have seen the quilt, and I will have explained. I did a top border. What I thought, it's what I ended up with is a more vertical wall hanging. I did a bigger border on the top and just a small little border over here. Again, it evolved, and this is how it's slightly different than my sunflower one. But this is how. Yeah, my thread broke. This stuff is a mess. But anyway, this is how. Yeah, see, it'll look nice when I'm done. So this is my. I hope you can see it. This is my shiny metallic. It is a pain in the neck to work with, but it does make up real pretty. So what I'll probably do, maybe like from this point, I'll probably just echo here the corners, perhaps, if I can stand working with this metallic thread here. As I said, I haven't found one that actually is fabulous. I haven't. I've been sewing forever. It's really effective. It's not cheap either, but I don't know. See how nice and sparkly it is? So it does add a nice sparkle, which picks up this sparkle here. But I'll bear with it because it's not a very large quilt. So I'll go back and I'll stitch that. I probably won't use it in here because it doesn't need it. So again, I'll probably just do my wavy stitch with the green and finish this up. So yeah, there's my quilting. Again, this will have. Oh, I'm gonna I'll probably just leave. I don't think I'm gonna do anything there. It's sort of puffy and proud, and I quite like that. Yeah, and I like the way that this cream picks up this cream here. The cream in the green. I like that. It sort of keeps your eye going. And the sparkly thread really does do the trick, even though it's a pain to work with. So I'll just finish up my quilting here. This will be in 2 parts. Hopefully you'll have seen you'll have tuned in to see both parts to see how this is made. Again, other tutorials do a Dresden plate in like 10 minutes. Sorry that I'm taking like 40 or 50. I really am. I don't know how they do it. But there you go, step by step. So yeah, that's my quilting. So thanks a lot. I've finished quilting the body of my quilt with this ridiculous thread. Literally, it just kept breaking and breaking, shredding and breaking. But I persevered. And what I've done is, if you can see, I stitched around the blades themselves about a 1/4 inch, and then came down. I don't know what I was doing, just this funky little echoing stitch on each corner, and then just on the top. And I just echoed it. And now what I've done is I got rid of that thread, and I'm just using like a reddish. It's almost like a hot pink, almost the exact color of the poinsettia. This lovely reddy pink, hot pink. And I've set my machine at just a wavy stitch, and it's that's it, just going along on a wavy stitch. Now, I've secured this with this cream thread. My sashing, which I did. I secure my sashings at the very as after I finished quilting the entire body. So I literally just secured those sashings. And this, again, remember the consistency, just like my sunflower quilt. This is about every inch apart that I'm quilting with this wavy stitch. Now I just going to come around on my stitch. Doesn't matter that corner's a bit funky. And then just come along. You can see you see it making that wavy stitch there. Now obviously you're going to be asking, perhaps, this border is wider than this side border. So when I come around, I obviously sort of run out of room on that border, which is true. So I will just continue. I probably can get 2 quilting wavy stitches on the small border, and then at the big border, I'll just go straight across, maybe 2 more. Yeah, I can probably get 1, 2, maybe just 1 more, and then my binding. So I'll just continue this around. Again, I've quilted this. I quilted it with, the backing is the same as this. It's so very pretty fabric. Wish they had poinsettias in the all year round. They're just such a beautiful, just such a pretty fabric. Pretty flower, I should say. So there's my fabric on the back, and then my quilting stitches on the back of my quilt. And then I will be attaching a hanging sleeve to the top, which is here, which is this wide, which is the wider border. But that's just a decorative quilting stitch because it's a wall hanging, and I want to get it over and done with. So I quite like the wavy stitch. It's not a zigzag set on your machine, it's a wavy stitch. But I'm sure most of you have decorative stitches. You could just do a decorative stitch. And I just sort of pull that around. Again, you see me smoothing and smoothing and smoothing. Come down this part, I'm just smoothing this out. Oh, I just wanted to show you. I have extra batting all the time, and this was 2 pieces of batting here that I just butted up to each other, and I use this tape to keep my battings together. Let me see. It's called heat press batting together, and here, heat press batting together. Quilters fuse batting pieces. So it's just a tape that you put the right side, or the edges of your batting pieces together, and then you iron it on. So anyway, that's an aside, me and my asides. But that way you don't toss out your batting pieces, because I have a big bag of them, I don't know. And then I discovered that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this tape. So this thread is so nice. It just, and you can see I'm gonna come down to where I've started this wavy stitch here, and you can see I'm holding my fabric sort of behind my needle, and because it's a pattern, I just sort of finish it up like there. That sort of knots it, and then I'll start, and I'll go around. I'll start here, and I'll go around on this one, and that will be done. Now at the very end, somebody asked, this stuff here and this stuff here. At the very end, when I'm all done my quilting, I will come back, and that is when, with this straight stitch, I will secure my quilt sandwich about 1/4 inch on this end, on this thing. I do it after my entire quilt is quilted. Stitch it along there, and then I'll come along with my scissors, and I will just cut off the backing and the batting of this quilt. And then my quilt will be ready to be bound. And in this case, like my sunflower, a hanging sleeve on the top edge, and then bound.